Hey everybody, what is going on? I am Maximus Rex and this is Big Baby Reviews. Today's JAE LEE Tuesday, so we're looking at the last issue he did for Extreme Studios and Rob Liefeld. This is Youngblood Strikefile issue number 3, cover dated August 1993. He'll be moving on after this to Wildstorm Studios, headed by Jim Lee, and he'll be working on a Wildcats trilogy miniseries, which I will start looking at next week. So, kind of a disappointing run here on Youngblood Strikefile. First of all, it's a flip book, so JAE LEE's only doing half the pages in the book, right? Split between his storyline on this side and Rob Liefeld's on the other side. I've already reviewed the Rob Liefeld portion a few months ago, so if you want to go check that out in the archives, please feel free to do so. This is kind of our second go-around on Youngblood Strikefile. And yeah, because of the flip book format, basically he's not doing the kind of standard 20-22 page comic. Really what his contribution is to the Extreme Studios world is 32 pages. It's 32 page comic. Issue 1 had 12 pages. Issue 2 was a bit disappointing, 2 pages less, 10 pages, and this one has 10 pages as well. So I guess he was just contracted for that. This will be a tie-in or a prologue to Chapel and Spawn's confrontation in Spawn issues 12 and 13. Few continuity issues there where maybe the writers aren't quite getting across some of the points that are in the storyline, so things that don't really match up, because I've read and I have reviewed Spawn 12 and 13 as well, so you can go look at that as well in the archive. Let's talk about the cover. So we've got a pretty typical kind of scary looking shot of Chapel by JAE LEE. Still got the huge kind of Simon Bisley proportions, the Bill Sienkiewicz style inking. I had never noticed this before. I don't think it's down to JAE LEE. I feel like he kind of stopped here where the ink is and just cut off Chapel at the waist. And whoever did this stuff down here is probably done by a colorist. At least I would tend to think so. And what leads me to believe is that basically Chapel here is buck naked, holding a scary looking knife and face painted like a skull. So anywhere else but on this comic or in the comic world, he would basically just be treated like a deranged lunatic, I think. And maybe he's not far off from that. A few things I noticed and I like about this cover, again, you know, the inking, the rough inking that he's still got here looks really cool. The hand, that I feel is one of the elements of his art that really hasn't changed all throughout his career and his various like stylistic changes. The hands have been pretty close to this look throughout, and even today his hands are similar to this and the way he inks them and stuff, and the fine lines he kind of uses for the textures and the shadows. Like the fact that he just blacks out the hand and the knife here. You know, once it gets down here, it just becomes a pure silhouette, which really works, and it's part of his style, of course. A lot of shadows around the face. The way he designed, I haven't talked about this before, but the way he designs a skull makeup on Chapel here, to me, almost kind of mirrors Spawn. I don't know if that's done consciously or not, but, you know, Rob Liefeld didn't have this kind of crack down the middle here where the skull things part. I get why JAE LEE's doing it, probably for the hairline or whatever. But yeah, it tends to basically resemble Spawn more and more, and Spawn's face in the comic will resemble more and more what's going on with Chapel here. So I don't know if that influenced Todd McFarlane in any way or Greg Capullo, but I do find there's something akin to JAE LEE's interpretation of Chapel's face and what Spawn's face will become. Maybe too monstrous for Chapel because he's still supposed to be just a regular guy with face paint on. But of course, JAE LEE style imposes that everything look kind of monstrous and scary. Still got the nipple fetish, nipple pretty obvious here. And that's about it for the cover. So this will probably be a quick review. Like I said, guys, 10 pages. Not a lot to say, but let's get to it. So creator story, Rob Liefeld, pencils, inks, JAE LEE, and script, Eric Stevenson, color design separation, Steve Oliff, and all the optics, and lettering, Kurt Hathaway. So we're now in kind of a flashback sequence, right? And we're seeing when Chapel, back in the day when he was working basically for the CIA, it's been hinted at, and working with Al Simmons before he becomes Spawn, right? And that's why, like I said, this is a bit of a prologue to that ultimate confrontation between the two in Spawn. Still got the nipples pretty obviously on view here, and I like the way he treats the silhouette of all this tech and technology in the background here. Works really well. We're getting a bit of background stuff, so which is kind of rare for the JAE LEE pages we've seen in Youngblood Strikefile up to this point. So we're kind of getting an establishing shot here where the idea is that we're in some sort of lab, obviously with a bunch of lab coat characters here. Not confusing in the least, I think, even with the minimal amount of backgrounds and establishing shot that we're getting here. And what we're seeing is that Chapel is being treated, I guess, or injected with some sort of super steroid. I guess that's what's basically hinted at here. Here's another nipple shot, right? And so this will tie into what we're going to see a little bit later. But yeah, so they're giving him shots that, I guess, as I said before, act as kind of a super steroid. Kind of a, you know, is this really necessary? Was a splash page necessary for this shot of, you know, the scientist and Chapel just kind of sitting there? Easy, fast, quick way to get out of a page. Almost no detail on the lower part here below the neck of Chapel. A bit of splatter in the background. Very kind of typical JAE LEE thing. Not saying that it's a bad image per se, but I do feel it's kind of a waste of a splash page, and this could have just been, you know, a panel up here, and there could have been a bit more storytelling. But I mean, I'll say again, I do find he is very intelligent and smart in the way he establishes his backgrounds very simply, right? Like even here, wow, that's just, you know, a negative space, a white space he's left with some shadows around it. But I do like the way he's done it here, kind of a designy element here, the whole panel itself kind of, you know, just off in the negative space here behind these two panels, and simple, sleek, kind of elegant design that I've talked about before with JAE LEE, even though, you know, with the characters, he's going with a rougher kind of inking style. So the doors open and Al Simmons is waiting for him. You get a bit of dialogue here that clues you in. What he says, you sure you ain't down here to get the same treatments I've been coming in for, right? For the super steroids. And Al Simmons says, what? Those injections? Not a chance, buddy. Wanda and I are still trying to have a baby. So this is a tie-in to the storyline in Spawn, right? The last thing I need is for Wynn's Techno Geeks to fill me up with God knows what kind of chemicals. So this ties into the fact that Al Simmons and his wife Wanda, before he was killed, and we know now that he was killed by Chapel, right, on orders of the CIA and Jason Wynn, that they were trying to conceive a baby, right? And as Spawn dies, makes his deal in hell, and comes back to Earth, and realizes, well, he's sent to Earth 5 years later, realizes his wife has remarried his best friend Terry, and they do have a child. So leading even more to Spawn's inner turmoil, that realizing that he was the problem, why they couldn't conceive a child, right? So there is some continuity tie in here in the story, which is fun. But later on, there's things that are going to contradict that Spawn storyline that I'll talk about when we get there. Pretty cool shot of just Chapel showing off. It's always kind of, you know, maybe in these shots it would have been nice to see Chapel without the face makeup, but it just seems like he's wearing it like 24/7 in this series. Maybe this is one of those moments where he wouldn't be walking around with it, because again, you know, it looks cool, but it gives him a monstrous look that really just doesn't jive with, you know, the reality, I guess, of the situation and the context here. But it's JAE LEE style, so you know, it does look cool, so I guess we can excuse it. And this shot of Chapel just kind of flexing his muscles and showing off is pretty hilarious, right? And there's kind of a good line here. I mean, look at me, Al. Have you ever seen a more perfect specimen? Only every time I look in the mirror. So some funny lines in this one. Not the best storyline you've ever read, but again, we're probably here more for the art than for the storyline. A little bit here, though, they're talking about Jason Wynn, and Al Simmons says, if you ask me, he's been acting kind of funny lately. As a matter of fact, I don't think he's ever been quite the same since he had us kill Duke. Kind of, in a way, an offhand reference to eventually Chapel killing Simmons, right? Or Al Simmons, and then Al Simmons becoming Spawn. Here's a bit of restraint I always thought was cool in this shot here. For some reason, I don't know why, it always reminded me of Mike Tyson. I feel like the proportions are just a bit more restrained and held back in the shot, and I really like it, and kind of more of a sign of things to come with JAE LEE's art once he starts toning it down a little bit with the extreme style and the huge proportions and stuff. And you know, again, storyline wise, he goes after Jason Wynn. Jason Wynn has him go after Geiger. He goes after Geiger, and then after Geiger, he goes back to Jason Wynn. That's basically what the storyline is. So there's a lot of run around in this one, kind of going in circles, even just for a short 32-page story. So really not a lot of meat on this bone when it comes to the storyline. But we now get another cool shot here of Chapel fully dressed up, contemplating his guns here, and of course, getting ready to go kill Jason Wynn. Again, clever use of silhouettes with the guns, where he just kind of blacks everything out and comes back with a bit of white medium to give you some detail there. Guns are hard to draw. I still struggle with drawing guns after years and years of, you know, having drawn them since I was a kid. I still find them difficult in perspective and stuff. A lot of little elements to keep track of. So this is kind of a simple and easy way to do it that I think works really well. Love the kind of just crescent moon that they got here in the background. this is, the most backgrounds we probably get in this whole issue, the establishing shot, but I think it's successful. We get the building, we get the fence, there's a lot of layering, foreground, underground, background, some dark trees here. Works pretty well for me. Chapel jumping over that same fence, and of course fighting off these guard dogs. I assume that's Chapel's knife there in that the first panel with the dog sequence, stabbing the dog in the head. Breaks into the place, and there's this sequence kind of funny to me because I'm assuming he breaks through a door here, right? And that's what we're seeing there, and we can clearly see that's what's going on. And then boom, he breaks through the door of Wynn's office, but it's just, you don't see an arm, a leg, anything kind of actually doing the scratching or the smashing of the door. So just to see a bit of his silhouette in the background there, I thought was just a little bit funny. And Wynn's just waiting for him, feet up on the desk here. And, again, not much going on action-wise, really. A lot of exposition here from Wynn. And this is kind of the salient or most important storyline beat that we're going to get in this issue. Wynn's talking about what we saw in the past, right? Whatever the case, have you ever wondered what was in those injections you were given during your time in my employ? What are you talking about? Well, we know what he's talking about, right? Those injections made you the man you are today, Chapel. Did you truly think the agency would endow you with such power without preparing in advance for potential problems? And then he mentions blood strike, right? So that's what blood strike's for, isn't it? You still don't realize where this is heading, do you? And here's the exposition we get. And I've always been kind of interested in conspiracies and conspiracy theories and stuff, and this more specifically relates to the AIDS virus and how it appeared. Some people back in the day used to say someone had sex with a monkey, which Dave Chappelle, if you know him, go look that up on YouTube. He's got a hilarious bit about, how do you have sex with a monkey? Right? I won't say any more than that. Even just asking the question, you should be like, yeah, right? Like, how would you approach a monkey and convince a monkey to let you have sex with it? So go check out that Dave Chappelle bit, and that kind of gives you, what I think of a situation like that, and the idea that AIDS came from a monkey and was transmitted to humans. This here is a conspiracy theory I've heard before, so, whether it's true or not, you decide, but I do think it's interesting in the context of this comic book and this storyline, and just in general kind of human history. Some 20 years ago, someone in research and development stumbled upon a highly lethal virus. Such was the nature of one particular strain of the virus that our government chose to release it into the populace as a form of population control. So I've heard that theory before, right? AIDS was released into the general public for exactly that, population control. Over time, the agency saw its usefulness as a method of controlling potentially dangerous agents, like Chapel, perfecting a more controllable offshoot strain of the disease that could be activated by our command. In the event that our blood strike unit fails to properly deal with a given situation, we activate the virus. So what you're telling me that our government created the AIDS virus? Sorry, Wynn, you're no Oliver Stone, and your little conspiracy theory ain't going to watch with me. This is just a few years after Oliver Stone directed one of my favorite movies, honestly. Again, like I told you, I'm interested in conspiracies. And when it comes to the JFK assassination, I do think even back in 1991, when Oliver Stone made that movie, JFK, he was pretty darn close to the truth of the situation. Whatever you believe, I'll just tell you, I don't believe that Lee Harvey Oswald could have been, a lone shooter. I honestly don't even believe he was actually shooting. Seems more like a military style assassination that happened there. But, everyone's got thoughts on it. Lots of new information's come out recently to the public that was already still, if you were interested in that kind of stuff, you could go look up even 5-10 years ago. And now it's official, but back then it was still kind of questioned. And is it true? Is it not? I fell down a JFK conspiracy rabbit hole years ago and really got into it. I've been to Dallas. I've been to Dealey Plaza twice to check out, where it happened. The 6th floor museum, I've been there as well. And, if you're interested in that kind of thing, I recommend this mini series that they did in the 80s and early 90s called The Men Who Killed Kennedy. There's like 9 episodes. They're almost an hour each. Riveting stuff. Tons of great information there. And of course, I leave it up to you to make up your own mind about that. Think what you will, but what I'm telling you is quite true. You'll find no record of my claims anywhere, no books that outline its discovery, but it does exist, and you have it, like most conspiracies. For so long, you've adorned yourself as a living dead, now you truly are. So he's told Chapel that basically he has AIDS, right? And I'll broach that subject again. The trope of the characters in the 90s having AIDS was pretty big. You know, AIDS was in the zeitgeist, being talked a lot about in the 80s and the 90s. So these Image guys were some of the first guys to incorporate it in their stories. Not to say that they were the only ones, but, you know, Chapel had it, Shadowhawk had it, and one of the Hulk's friends in Marvel Comics had it. And I know there are other characters. Oh yeah, Bloodfire from Lightning Comics, kind of more obscure, but it was just a thing that a lot of people kind of worked into their storylines. And of course, Chapel's like, no, typical shot again. Do we need a splash page for Chapel just kind of holding guns here? Probably not. Probably could have been done and in a smaller panel and given us some more storytelling here. But that's not what JAE Lee chose to do, and that wasn't the Image way anyways. So it makes sense in 1993 to do it this way. It's a great Image though. Won't deny that. Maybe a better poster than a panel in a comic book. I ain't going down alone, Win. I can still kill you. And you're more than welcome to, but before you do, I think you should know I have the cure. So Chapel right away, kind of diminished. What do you want? And Win basically just says, consider this old friend. You have no one to turn to, nowhere to run. Your luck, as the saying goes, has run out. We had a wonderful partnership together before, Chapel, and I'm not so insensitive as to overlook that. If you want to live, you know where to reach me. And kind of just the storyline ends with a bit of a whimper once again, like a lot of Image storylines. And there's also, I didn't read the part before, but Win basically says, you know, from this point on, your service in Youngblood is you know, terminated. I'm going to let them know that you have AIDS and they're going to get rid of you. So that's the bit where I find, like, Win says it, you know, and then when we next meet Chapel in this kind of context in the Spawn storyline, in Spawn issue 12 and 13, he's still with Youngblood. So I don't know exactly what happened there. Like I said, messages maybe got a bit crossed between the storyline going on here and in Spawn. Good on them for trying to connect things and create a bit of continuity within Image Comics, but I don't think McFarlane or Liefeld were kind of the best candidates to do that. Those who did it a little bit better in Image, cross-continuity stuff, were probably Jim Valentino with Shadowhawk and Eric Larson with Savage Dragon. Things at least had a little bit more impact and made a little more sense continuity-wise when they would cross over with other Image characters. And there you go, guys. That is it for this review of JAE Lee's Youngblood Strikefile issue number 3. If you're still subscribed and you're still watching, thank you so much. I really do appreciate your support. If you're watching but you're not subscribed, please do so below. It only takes a real quick second for you to do it, and it really helps the channel out, helps us grow, and helps spread the word out there to other people who are into comic books just like we are. We are on the road to hitting 500 subscribers. That's where YouTube recognizes us as an official channel. So if you can help out, please do so. Tell your friends, tell your neighbors to come and check out the channel if they're into comic books, and to like and subscribe. So everyone out there, thank you for watching once again, and have an awesome day. King Comics presents Big Baby, Volume 1, Issues 1 to 13. 204 pages of story and art. King Comics also presents Star Crasher one-shot, 32 pages, cosmic sci-fi surrealist adventure. You can find these fine comics at kingcomics.ca, at MaximusRex13 on Instagram, or on Facebook, MaxRex or Big Baby. Like!